Errol, welcome to the podcast. Super excited to have you here today. And obviously, huge shout out to our guy Grano for getting us connected that way. For people who aren't familiar with you, or maybe they don't know the backstory and all that way, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all that you've got going on?
Yeah. So my name is Kara. I'm originally from Arizona, but I'm now located in Fort Worth, Texas. I met Grano swimming at the Texas Christian University, and he was my weights coach. So that's how we got connected. But I was a swimmer here, and now I've retired. I'm graduated, but I still am into fitness and things like that. So still moving around.
That's incredible. Walk me through that journey from Arizona to Texas, because I'd imagine, a lot of times I talk with athletes and they go to schools, 50 miles down the road from where I grew up. You jumped over a few states that way. What was that transition like for jumping from Arizona to Dallas?
I did my first 2 years of college actually at the University of Kansas, so that was a bigger jump. Um, but I knew my senior year of high school when I was going through the recruiting process, and I was a late commit. I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do college sports, but I was like, "I've done this for 20 years, I may as well just keep going." Um, so I eventually ended up in Kansas, and that was a big change, weather-wise for sure, but also just, like, culture. It's just different out there. Everybody's a lot more nice out there, honestly. But that was those first 2 years were really, really fun. And then I ended up transferring beginning of my junior year out here. And Texas and Arizona are really similar. So I think that's why I stayed. It's very much the same.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because when people ask me for food recommendations, those are usually my 2 go-to states. I love the food scene in the Phoenix Valley, and I
Yeah.
love the barbecue scene in Texas. So,
Awesome.
very similar that way. I gotta ask, what is your personal, like, barbecue recommendation now that you've been in Texas for a few years? Where are we going Terry Black's or
I've actually never been to Terry Black's. I pass it every day going to work, but I've never been there. No, I'm the classic Heim. Everybody rants and raves about it, and it's so good.
I respect that. So obviously, we went to Kansas and then came down to TCU, and all of this was for swimming that way. What was that transition like from Kansas to TCU that way? And I guess I should even back up further. What kept us swimming through that? Because I'm sure there might have been some times along the way where maybe we had some doubts, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. My freshman year at Kansas was, like, perfect as anybody could ask. I swam well, was doing well in school, I loved it. My sophomore year, I think I just put a lot of pressure on myself, so going into it, I was kinda like, "I don't know if I can top what I just did," and so I already started to kind of, like, doubt myself. And then I got injured towards the end of my sophomore year that ended up going into my junior year and a little bit my senior year. So, I was like, "I just think I need to start over." So that's kind of what prompted the transfer, and at the time, my old club coach from Arizona was coaching at TCU. So I knew if I could go anywhere, I'd wanna go here and be back with him. So that was kind of my mindset going into the transfer portal, and it ended up working out.
One of the other things I hear a lot about from athletes is that they face some trying times in sport. Maybe it's injury or external factors or so on that way. And one of the things that I respect, and we even gave shout outs to these people on our little 500 episode special that way of the podcast, right? Guys like Nick Grano, guys like Rob Nelson, all these different strength coaches who are literally just popping up over and over again from athletes I talk with because they were there for them during those difficult times. They were relatable and they kind of went a little bit more above and beyond what was asked in the job description, right? This is not just ability to lift 50 pounds, put together a program, do some stretching and call it a day. This is kind of more the human side of the sport, if you will, that way. I'd love to hear more about kind of what that was like for you. What things kind of got thrown in our way as an obstacle and how did we overcome that adversity in our past?
Yeah, so I am a very injury prone athlete person in general. So, like freshman year, I had stress fractures. And I think what people don't realize with swimming is you don't bear weight on your bones, right? So you're always in the water. And so you're just weak. Like outside of the pool, you're just weak. So I dealt with a lot of those I call them petty compared to what I ended up going through, but those smaller injuries, stress fractures, things like that. My junior year, and this is where I give a lot of credit to Grano, is I herniated C456 in my neck, and this was an ongoing injury. It started sophomore year. I kind of was at practice one day. It's something I've done a million times, and my entire left side of my body was numb, and it was freaked me out, obviously. But they were like, maybe it's a pinched nerve. Nobody really knew. Um, and then going into my junior year, same situation happened. I dove in the pool and kind of, didn't come back up the way they thought. My neck was stuck pretty much. Um, and nobody knew what to do. I didn't know what to do. I was like freaking out. And Grano was like, all right, what's the rehab plan? Let's just start with mobility and we'll build strength back, which is something that I think I needed in that moment because I was so like, I'm done. I don't want to push it. And I hated the weight room. So I didn't help myself too much ahead of time either. But looking back, I'm so glad Grano, who was my weights coach at the time, was not freaked out about it and went online, did his own research, and was like, let's get to it. Let's do something people don't think we can do.
And what was the outcome of that? I got it. We got to get to the good part, right?
Yes. So my junior year was kind of just I got injured 6 weeks out from conference, so it was pretty much just get out of the neck brace and back in the water and do what you can. And it ended okay. I mean, it was fine. My senior year, I came back fresh, like totally reset, and I ended up having the best season of my career. I broke a couple school records and I left on a high note. So I'm glad I didn't throw in the towel, but definitely thought about it many, many times.
Absolutely. And just for the records that way, what were those events that you were swimming? What school records do we have or still hold?
I have the 500 free, and then I had the mile. It's broken, but I did swim that and the 2 free. Those were my main 3 events.
I gotta, if I had a hat on right now, I'd be tipping it to you because the whole thought of swimming a mile, let alone swimming a mile in a pool back and forth,
Yep.
I don't know how you do it. And when you are swimming it, do you count the laps? Like, do you keep track of what, like, how does that work? Like,
So you have somebody does count the laps for you at the end of the pool, but, I don't look up at the counter. They put it in every lap, so 3, 5, 7, all the way up to 66, or 63, I guess, but I choose not to look at it. I choose peace for the first, like, 10 minutes of the race.
but that's a long race. My goodness. I was gonna say most people they can run a mile and like
Yeah,
even if you're slow, you're probably done in 8 or 9 minutes tops.
exactly.
You're in the pool for a long time. So
Yeah,
huge
17.
respect to you for that.
Thank you.
Now, breaking down some of the things that you brought up in relation to your story. I mean, first off, an athlete that hates the weight room? What? That's like unheard of, right? It's so interesting to me how many athletes, for one reason or another, have this bad vibe with weightlifting. And I'm not 100% sure what it is or why it is. It seems to be different for everyone, but there seems to be some kind of disconnect between athletes and lifting weights for whatever reason. And I hear that so much that I think there's something to, we need to bridge that gap somehow because we seem to find benefits when people get stronger from a preventative standpoint and so on that way. And we know long term that's good for their health. So it's like, how do we close that gap and get people to maybe have better vibes around the weight room that way? And I'm very open to any thoughts or insights that you have on that, or even what you're doing now on that regard too, whether it's, we're all in on high rocks or whatever it is. Like, I think people got to find what works for them, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's exactly the angle to come at it though, is preventative for injuries and staying strong, especially for female athletes. Muscle and, weightlifting is healthy. It's something that you need to do for your body and bones. But I think that is exactly what scares people at the same time, is we don't wanna look bulky. Me, I was a distance swimmer, you don't want to be big, and my freshman year, I put on, like, 15 pounds of muscle, like, pure muscle, and I was strong, but I didn't, like, feel good about it. So I think it kind of made me hate it even more, and then sophomore year, I was like, "I'll do anything to stay out of this weight room, like, please, no." So I think just flipping the mindset from you're gaining muscle to you're preventing injury. I think that goes a long way. I now run marathons, and that is I still hate the weight room, but I go 3, 4 times a week just for that. I don't wanna be injured, so I need to do this. And I think if I would have had that mindset as a college swimmer, I probably would have benefited a lot more.
What was that transition like from swimming to running marathons? Because normally I don't hear that from swimmers that I've worked
A
with.
lot injury at first because I didn't bear much weight and I wasn't strong. So, it was tough getting into it, but running is something I've done my whole life. I mean, even when I was swimming on Sundays, it's my active recovery. I just enjoyed it. My dad does it, so I would do it with him. So, I knew that's the path I was gonna take after swimming, and I was excited because you still have that competitive spark after you are done with college athletics. So it was a smooth transition outside of being weak. So
Yeah, and what marathons have we run, and what is next on the docket there? Do we have any big plans? Is Boston in the works?
Boston is the goal. I have done Cowtown, which is here in Fort Worth, and then I just recently did Oklahoma City. I've only been really running for like a year and a half. So this year I'm hoping to do Dallas in December, and qualify for Boston.
That's absolutely incredible. We love that. We love that. And you had mentioned before about being injury prone. It sounds like that showed up again on the running side, but even going back to what you mentioned earlier, it started with kind of stress reaction, stress fracture type stuff, and then cascaded into the neck that way. It seems to be something that I've talked with a lot of athletes about where they feel for some reason their luck is just not bad or not good because they know someone who, oh, they've gone through all this stuff and they've never been hurt. They've been fine. Like, why me? And I think it's very, very easy to find yourself caught up in that and struggle mentally or struggle with your faith and question things a little bit like, what is this trying to teach me? Why does this keep happening to me of all people? Did you ever find yourself working through any of that yourself? And what was that like? And what kind of things helped you through those times that way?
Yeah. I think that is the part of injuries that is the least talked about is the mental side. I think injuries are very isolating, especially like for me, my injury was something you can see, right? You can see somebody in a knee brace or with a cast on, and you know, oh, they're injured, they're going through something. But when it's something you can't see, it's very much forgotten. And something else with college athletics is you have to understand that these coaches, the trainers, everybody has 50 other athletes that they work with, right? You're not the only one that's injured, the only one going through something, but it feels like that. And I think for me, what helps kind of navigate that was speaking up for one, especially to the trainers. You spend so much time with them. My PT was great, and she would always do a mental check first. You know, how are we feeling up here before we get into anything else? And also just having open communication with the coaches, like, "Hey, I'm scared to get back in the water because that was horrible what happened to me, and I don't know if I can do this anymore." Kind of open the door for them to be like, "Oh, this is what's we have more than just the physical aspect to address here." But it's hard. It's hard because you don't want to fail anybody. You don't wanna feel like you're disappointing people. So I think that the physical side was hard, the mental side was harder.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear that as well from a lot of athletes, and a lot of athletes tell me they don't feel they had the resources that they needed, the people that they could talk to, and they feel like they kinda had to figure it out on their own, and some have even told me they felt like people were scared to work with them on it because, there's this growing thing, and I'm not a mental health provider myself, don't pretend to be one for that matter, but there's this growing belief that in order to do something beneficial for your mental health, you can only work with a mental health provider. And I'm gonna bite my tongue on that for the most part, but I'm gonna say I think there's things that we can do for our mental health that are not just talking to a certified, qualified provider. I think mental health looks different for everyone, and I think there's a huge overlap personally between faith in that, and that's my bias, and I'm sticking to it.
Mhm.
But I think the more you can find people that you personally benefit from talking to, whatever that looks like for your own little team, if you will, the better off you're gonna be. But athletes almost need to find a way in these darker times to stand up for themselves and kind of advocate for the light that they need, if that makes any sense.
And all it takes is one person. Grano was my crutch, when I was going through this, but my group coaches, my head coach, I also give them a lot of credit too, and I just think once you open up to one person or trust in one person, it becomes a little bit easier to navigate everybody else on the staff that you have to kind of work with, because at the end of the day, you can't do it all on your own. You just can't.
Yeah, and I would imagine, to your point about the neck, and obviously with a brace, everyone can see that. It's that kind of thing that I'd imagine you're constantly thinking in your head, like, "What are they saying about me? What are they thinking about me?" Like, they can't figure out what's wrong, like, "Is this all in my head?" kinda thing, or is there truly actually something wrong? Because when someone tears their ACL, everyone immediately knows what it means. But some of these other crazy, weird stuff that needs an explanation, I feel like people and providers are guilty of this themselves as well, whether they know it or not, have certain biases around what they're working with that way. And it's like these things that need an explanation and we're a little less comfortable with because we don't see them as often. We might have a certain implicit bias around that, I think.
I fully like, when I was in the neck brace, I couldn't turn my head side to side, couldn't say yes or no, couldn't raise my hand to brush my hair, and I was like, "I'm being dramatic, like, this is fully in my head," and it wasn't, obviously, I ended up having a whole plethora of things wrong, but absolutely, I mean, you sit there and you're like, this fake? Is this real? Is it really the end? Is it not?" And teammates talk, coaches talk, trainers talk, and especially if you're an athlete that is repeatedly injured or repeatedly having issues, you see that even more. They're less likely to speak up because now they think, "Oh, am I faking it?" You know? So you absolutely see that. And I think, in my opinion, to stop that kind of stuff, it takes your close circle and also the leadership of whatever team you're on. I think you have to just address that point blank of like, "Hey, so and so is out and they need your support." Something as simple as that can go a long way.
100% agree. And the other piece that you brought up as you were talking as well is that there was a lot of people talking, and then we finally get someone who's like, "What is the plan? Like, we need to figure this out and take action." And I think communicating that brings an element of peace in times that are just very uneasy and uncertain, for lack of a better way to put it, right? People like to know that there's this end goal that we have and we all acknowledge. We know where we're at right now. What are the steps to get there? What does that look like? Okay, sure, the plan's going to change 10 times along the way, but where are we starting and where are we going to start moving along this path instead of just trying to, still get in this like almost like analysis by paralysis state,
Yeah.
right? We spend so much time trying to think about things like what the diagnosis is and all these different factors and variables that we forget a lot of things, not all things, but a lot of things just get better if we start wherever we are at and stay in motion, for lack of a better way to put it.
I think also to that point, there's not a lot of communication between everybody involved. Like when I was going through PT, me and my PT were like, the first thing we want to do is get to conference. Like we have 6 weeks to get you out of the brace, back in the pool, and able to compete fully. So what do we do to get there? But at the time, I think my coaches were more concerned with like, we want you to take your time. We don't want to put you in any harm's way, right? So the goals, the common goal isn't always the same. And that is also something that a lot of athletes run into as well. Just maybe their goals are different than the coaches, or maybe they are ready to be done and the coaches are like, what do we do next? And you just get stuck in this cycle of forgetting that you are the person that has to get up and do your sport. So you have the most say in the situation, even if it doesn't feel like that.
Absolutely. And to that point, you obviously knew, hey, like we got to find a way back from this.
Yeah.
Walk me more through what that process to get there looked like. Cause we got to the good part where we've got those record setting. And obviously, anyone after an injury, that's what they want to do, right? They want to come back. They want to have their best season ever. They want to set the school records. And you did that. We talked about where we're at. Fill me in on the gaps in that process, if you will.
So after I got hurt, I that end of that week, I went under and had a couple PARS injections, cortisone, all of that stuff to help me move, so that we could immediately start with mobility. And that was something that really helped my senior year is my activation routine before even getting in the water was extensive and it helped. It kept me good to go. So that was the first thing, and then that was pretty much in the weight room and with my PT. So I really was doing that probably like 6 or 7 times a week, honestly, going in and just a band around my head, turning my head, and it seems so silly, but it was hard. And then, one time, we put a ball against the wall and I would push my head into it to try and get my spine back in line. Literally the basics of just getting your posture right before we try and do anything athletic. And then after mobility got a little bit better, range of motion was improving, we worked on strengthening. So a lot of, again, putting my head back. How do we keep my head back instead of push forward? Because when I dove in, that's what happened. So it really went mobility, strength. I think I was out of the pool for like probably 4 weeks, and it wasn't even an option to get back in before I could show that I was back 100% outside of the water.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and one of the things you brought up there repeatedly was the concept of the basics, and one of the biggest issues and misconceptions I see with providers working with athletes, and I don't care what the title is, coach, clinician, whatever, they overcomplicate everything because so and so is this level athlete. So we can skip all this other stuff because they're an this level athlete and they try and get too fancy, too cute, and they get too complex way too quick. And it's like simple always wins. The more simple we can make something, the better off it's going to be. I don't think most athletes that I've worked with really care if the exercise is the coolest. I think they care about does it do what it needs to do and do they get back to the level that they want to get back to. If you accomplish those two things, you can come up with the craziest exercise. If it does those two and athletes are happy, we're good. You don't have to get all crazy. You don't have to get all Instagram cute with it. You can just do the things that work really well and have worked really well for a long time, I think.
Yeah. And I think there is both fear and pressure. Like you said, you know what kind of athlete you can be. So you put pressure on yourself right off the bat to get up and get back to where you were. And that was something I tried to do. I remember I tried to like go for a run maybe like 2 days after I was under anesthesia and I was like, obviously it didn't go well. But you it's, like, so quick to get back to where you were, and that's just not how it goes. So, thankfully, I had a team that was like, "No, we're starting from 0," and looking back, I'm so glad they did that and didn't let me try and, like, convince them that I was fine, just because of the pressure you put on yourself. And then on the flip side, there's so much fear. Like, you do wanna start with the basics because you're scared to get hurt, you're scared to tear your ACL again, you're scared to dive in the water and not come back up, and those 2 work against you most of the time, you want the pressure to go away, and you want the fear to go away, but you have to do it in different ways. You can't just jump right in.
Did you have any of that fear factor or, in baseball, they call it the yips that way. Was that something that existed for you? And if so, how long did that last?
I so I did end up going to conference about 6 weeks after the injury, and I wouldn't dive in. Normally, I would just dive in for warm-ups and call it good. I would not dive in, I would, like, sit and scoot in the water like a wreck swimmer, and I was just too paranoid that if I kept diving in, it would happen again. So I'd only dive if I was diving into a race, and then at practice, I took a while off after conference. I took probably a month, and then in the summer, I probably took another 2 or 3 weeks of just no swimming and doing anything other than that, because I was so scared that that repetitive motion of, like, turning my head was what caused it, and, yeah, it didn't help, but I wasn't making anything worse by doing that, so I definitely struggled to get back normally, probably till I started competing again my senior year.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think as you broke that down too, you found an entry point, right? You just found a way in. And a lot of times people are scared to do that, right? they think, oh, I can't return to practice because I can't do the whole practice. Can we do 10 minutes of the practice, right? Or one of my favorite things when I'm working with athletes who have injured their ankles and knees and different things is, hey, sure, you can't run right now, but can you walk? Can
Yeah,
you literally go on the field and walk through the drill? Just
exactly.
where are you going to be? What are you going to be doing? And kind of mentally visualize that. And I think having that entry point, even if it's not fully diving in head first into the water, but just getting in the water and getting after it, like it's just a huge step in the right direction, I think. And I'm sure there's so many other drills that you can incorporate as well. I am not the best swimmer. I'm good for about 60, 70 feet in a lake in the summertime. Stories on that another day. But like, there's so many different, like the little like aqua jogging, the like little kickboard things. Like there's so many other things you can do in the pool besides just stroke specific stuff.
Yeah.
And I think people forget about that. And it's like if you get a little creative, you might be able to find a way to make things work for you a little easier, I think.
And my coaches were great about that, honestly. They never pushed me to get back to where I was. They were like, "Do what you can," which I really appreciated because it helped kind of bring that fire back for me without other people having to do it. And I spent a lot of time in the snorkel using that instead of breathing on my own, just having that was helpful. And then like senior year, I had one like minor episode with my neck and my coach was like, "We're going to sit out for the next 3 or 4 days until you can fully say that your neck doesn't hurt and we'll get back to it." And I think just giving that grace because I wouldn't have said, "Hey, my neck hurts." She could picked up and she was like, "Yeah, no, we're not going to push through this again." So I just think becoming attuned with your swimmers as well, or any athletes really, and helping them identify when it's time to maybe slow down for a second because it helps you in the long run for sure.
We've talked so much about the swimming piece. What were you studying in school, and what was kind of the overlap, if you will, between kinda athletics and, academics that way?
I got my bachelor's in psychology and my minor was criminal justice. So the mental health side of things was very much of interest to me too.
And is there anything that you learned now that maybe you wish you knew when you were in school that way from kind of that academic athletic overlap, if you will?
I think that 2 things I would tell myself is you're gonna learn more from the hardships than you do from the things that turn out exactly how you want them to. Um, and also just enjoying the process because that is where you learn your lessons. I've taken so much from that probably 6, 7-month period of constant rehab and PT and having to show up for myself. And now when I go to work, I'm thankful I can go. I am on 2 feet, I have a job, I enjoy what I do, and it's the same thing for athletics. After that injury, I was like the mindset shift of, "I have to do this," versus, "I get to do this," was probably the biggest thing I learned from that.
And, do you have any insights or advice for athletes who are maybe D1 swimmer themselves now or planning to go into the D1 swim space that way, just based on your own swimming career?
You are your biggest advocate. Absolutely. You know yourself better than anybody. If you need something, ask because there are resources, and even though they're not falling from the sky when you need them, they're out there. So you have to use your voice and good things will come.
And to your point on resources, I feel like a lot of times when people talk about athletics and resources, football and basketball come to mind first, 100% of the time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm gonna guess swim and dive is lower end of the totem pole,
Correct.
unfortunately, for the majority of athletics. But that doesn't mean that you are not valued. That does not mean there's not things there for you. It just means you might have to fight a little bit harder to get them, 1, and 2, a lot of athletes I talk with in today's day and age are concerned about the personal branding, the NIL and that sort of thing. And they say, well, if I go for a sport like this, like I'm not going to be able to build that out. And I think that's the terrible, wrong way to think.
Yeah.
I think regardless of what sport you have, you can make whatever you want from it, right? You're only a victim if you choose to be, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So if you're swim and dive at a D1 university and you're like, well, this athlete's making millions of dollars. How come I'm not getting paid millions? You still have the opportunity. It might be a little bit more work. It might not be the same playing field, but I still think that you can get after it and get it done if you put the time and effort and energy into it, regardless of what sport you play.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a sports psych my entire career, the whole time I was there, um, at both schools, and all I did was ask, "Who do I talk to? What do I do?" And then NIL really became a thing probably my sophomore year. I mean, freshman year it was around, but not really much. It was never something I was like, "Yeah, I wanna do this." But I know it's really picked up in the last couple years, and the cool thing is once one person does it, everyone else wants to do it. And again, all it takes is one person. We have people that get these deals, and then somebody else in the group is like, "Well, how'd you do that? I wanna do that." And suddenly the swim team is making a name for itself. So it really if you wanna do it, do it. You have the opportunity, why not take it?
To your point about having a psychology background yourself and working with sports psychologists that way, what kind of things should people look for when working with a sports psych? And is there anything that might want to maybe choose a different one or seek other insight and advice that way?
I I mean, you're gonna know who you vibe with and who you don't. If you feel like you're having to pull teeth to get a response that you're looking for, or you feel like you're being judged in any capacity, um, just go somewhere else. I know a lot of female athletes like to talk to females, males like to talk to males. I've heard females that like to talk to males. I mean, I do think gender does play a role sometimes just in your comfort level, also depending on what you're talking about. So don't be scared to be like, yeah, this it's not you, but it's not helping me the way I needed, so I'm gonna go find something else. They understand, and it's not you're not the first one to do that.
I 100% agree. And I think the best clinicians, regardless of what we're talking about, ortho, PT, AT, chiro, whatever, whoever, the best ones are the ones that truly want to help you and that acknowledge when they're not the person to help you, right?
Yeah,
I had a conversation with a patient today. This is how I end my day. A conversation about, hey, if things are not better by this date, I'm not the person for you.
yep,
And it's a little bit difficult to have that conversation, right? It's a little difficult to say, like, I've got all these things, I've done all this great stuff. Yes, I'm highly recommended, but there's weak spots within my own training and my own experience, and I can't do everything because I'm not Superman, right? Like, you have to know your limitations as a provider, and I think the more providers can acknowledge and understand that, unfortunately, we cannot address and help 100% of the issues that come to us 100% of the time, the better off we all become as a result.
yeah. And just asking, "Hey, can you help me find somebody that can help me in X, Y, and Z areas?" People know people. Everybody's connected, especially in college athletics, so they're gonna refer you to someone else, and you're still an athlete, they still support you, and you're still gonna go just as far.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I would assume the lessons that you've taken from sport and your own experiences are having a profound impact on your day-to-day work and life nowadays as well, correct?
Yes, I work now pretty much with the CPS system, and I'm the biggest advocate for all my own clients, and just as you said, I also know when my job is up, my time, my work with you is done, there's nothing else I can give you, but I will help you find the next thing for you, so both of those things I use in my career now.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate people like you and your line of work that way. I think it's one of those things if I had to guess, and we don't have to get into too many details, but I would have to guess sometimes your line of work can be very difficult and very challenging, but we need people like you doing that in the world and pushing
Yeah,
through those challenging times. So we really appreciate people like you and all that you do for the future generations, if you will, because
yeah.
you never know what they can grow up to be and what impact they can have on the world that way, in my opinion. Do you have siblings yourself? Is there some kinda, like, athletic sibling rivalry that's fueled this whole thing we've been discussing?
Honestly, no. All of my siblings I got into swimming because my 2 older sisters did it, and I hated it at first, but I really didn't have a choice. And then my younger brother did everything under the sun. I mean, soccer, baseball, basketball, everything. But none of them did college athletics. They all stopped in high school, so I'm the athlete of the family, what I tell people.
I love that. Oldest, youngest?
I am the middle. I'm the
The
3rd.
middle. Okay. I was gonna say, are all these sibling stereotypes true, or
Yes, absolutely. Oldest sibling is, like, type A, her way or the highway. Me and my 2nd oldest sibling, we're both just I'm more forgotten, but we're very middle child, absolutely. And then my brother gets everything he wants, so he's the youngest.
funny how that works. One of the other things I always love to talk with athletes about is the travel aspect, right? Obviously, being a D1 athlete, you kinda get to see places in the world and things that maybe you
Yeah.
wouldn't have seen otherwise. Are there any travel stories or places you've been that really stuck with you to this day?
Hawaii,
Hawaii.
100%. So much fun. I went there for training trip my sophomore and junior year. Sophomore year was with Kansas, junior year was with TCU, so that was fun to experience both teams. But literally just team bonding, the memories, can't forget them. And then in club, we did a lot of traveling in club too. So Minnesota is the one that sticks out to me because honestly, it was a horrible meet. Like we did not swim very well, but coming from Arizona, we were in a place that was freezing and snowy and it was so much fun. So
Yeah, that's a huge difference for sure that way. And of course, as self-proclaimed big back, I always have to bring up the food. I know we talked barbecue a little bit before, but any really good food recs or coffee recommendations across your travels that way?
Hawaii has this one place, I literally cannot remember what it's called. It's almost like a food truck, but it's right um, outside of, like, the university, and it has, like, steak and rice. Sounds so simple, but it's so good. Not very helpful because I don't know what it's called, but that would be the only thing. I'm not a big foodie, so Minnesota, I've got nothing for you.
I was gonna say, the one I always hear about in Hawaii is called Mama's Fish House, and
I do see that one, yeah.
it's got, like, tens of thousands of reviews or something and ridiculous that way. You have to reserve it months in advance. That's the only one that I've really heard that way. But it's so funny you say a food truck because there's several lacrosse athletes I've worked with in the past who just start naming these random food trucks in like random cities that just apparently have the best food. So it's always good to have recommendations like that. I realize we covered a lot of different things here from travel to your journey and your experiences all the way up to where you're at now and the impact that different individuals have had along your way as well that way. Is there anything we missed or anything that we didn't cover that we wanted to?
I don't think so.
Awesome. For people listening who want to find out more about you or keep up to date with all the amazing things that you're doing, can they find you online or anything like that?
Yes, my Instagram is Kara Church, Kara, name Church.
Super easy. We will link to that in the description below. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, you can just click there and see everything that Kara has going on. And again, huge shout out to our guy Nick. I'm sure he's going to be listening to this over and over again. Um,
Better.
you know, appreciate him for connecting us. And I think it's important to note that I'm still stronger than him. Um, just throwing that out there, buddy. Just a
And
little
I'm still faster than him in running, so
we both got him beat then. We
yeah.
we need that. But really appreciate your time today, Kara. Next time I'm down in Texas, we'll definitely get together. I'll invite
And
Reno, and we're all gonna destroy some B-dubs on a Thursday night for some boneless wings.
Thursday. Perfect.
Fantastic.
Well,
You have
thank
a
you for having me.